just as much as you are a spiritual creature, you are a sexual creature. You've been made with desires. And inside of each one of us is a fire like this, a fire that burns with desire, a fire that burns with desire for God, and a fire that burns with desire for others. And that fire is meant to be contained in something. It's meant to have parameters. It survives in a container, but when it gets outside of that container, all of a sudden, it starts running wild and damaging things, right? Like if you had a fire in your home and it got outside of the hearth, all of a sudden, if it's in the walls of your home, the fire that was nice and keeping you warm is about to kill you. And in the same way, sex and sexual desires outside of their intended context become incredibly destructive for our souls. Sex has been made for the container of one man and one woman put together by God in marriage. That's what God intended it for. That's what he blessed it with. In Genesis 1, we see he puts Adam and Eve together in a covenantal relationship and blesses them with the gift of sex. It's within the container that sex and sexual desires are good for us. They're helpful for us. But when it gets outside, that's when it gets destructive. So what happens is this. I think many of us have started building fires outside of the context of what it's made for. We want these sexual desires within us to be expressed and fulfilled, and we're not sure quite how to do it. And so we start building fires outside of the container it was meant for, and it's incredibly dangerous. Like all of a sudden, we're looking on Instagram and we see a picture and we stop and we slide back up to look at it again. And then slyly, we slide into their DMs. And then we want to pursue something with that person to fulfill our sexual desires. And that sexual desire within us that was actually meant to be a loving expression is now just a selfish expression of me wanting to fulfill my own desires instead of do it in the context of what God has asked for. And when we start building fires that are outside of the context, we end up getting burned by the fire that we were never meant to touch. See, inside of each one of us is a fire. And the only fire that's safe for you is your own. So when God says the two become one, all of a sudden the person you became one with, their fire is safe to touch. But if you are not one with that person through a covenantal relationship of marriage, their fire is not safe to touch. So when you start building that fire around them and wanting to spark it into life, you're going to damage them and yourself. But some of you would go, oh, no. I would never build a fire to try to express my desires. But you know what? Maybe I could just stoke someone else's fire. Maybe I could just get them to look at me because I want to be wanted. I want to be desired. And no, I would never follow through with it. But you know what? I'll get down and I'll start blowing on someone else's fire so that the fire within them, this desire for them grows. And you know what happens is you start a raging inferno within that person that's harmful to them. And so we blow on fires or we build fires, not realizing that these fires that we're blowing on and building are outside of the context that God intended it for. And when we get near it, we get burned.